I think very interesting session. The first session was very interesting, and we are all talking about how far we have matured in our ESG journey. And let me start by just a show of hands. How many of us think that our organization is matured as far as whatever work on ESG they can do? What? A show of hands? Define maturity. Pretty much integrated, good data, and it is far beyond compliance. Just one, a little higher. Okay. No, that's interesting. It always gives a reflection of what's actually happening. How many of us are doing ESG, but it's mainly because we need to meet the compliance requirement? And the rest? Yeah, that's always a question mark, right? So I think it's interesting, right? We did the survey, and Hitesh in the morning presented that while we talk to both the large and to the smallest, of course, they are in a different, point in the graph in the ESG journey, but it's been evolving in our experience in a good way. I think we are still, except a few handful, I would say, still looking at regulations. So whenever we have seen any change, ESG reporting started many years back. It was driven by investors. So there's always financing. And I know in the first session we talked about how do we translate our ESG into ROI, which is measured in financial terms, because that's when you will see money coming and people putting true value. And taking that conversation forward, this session is mainly focused on the value chain. We spoke in the first session about an ecosystem. The ecosystem cannot be completed unless the value chain is involved. So the larger companies, tech companies, everybody should be involved in making sure that the MSMEs, we are supporting everyone. Only then can we be a truly ESG compliant, net zero, kind of a country. So with that, let me first move on to Prabodh and ask him the first question, that ESG is not easy, because even if I look at regulation and, we see most of the companies acting on it, doing ESG work because of regulation and compliance, but it's not standardized. So if you, many of you are global companies, you have Indian BRSR Core, etc. But look at the world around us. Europe, multiple regulations. US going up, going down, depending on who's there. But we have seen the ESG regulations also evolve. So how do you manage, to do what you do? It's a pretty diversified business, and take care of the different KPIs.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me opportunity to open the panel. I think you are right. We are in an alphabet soup when it comes to sustainability. And how do we navigate the complexity is the biggest question. And I was telling just before coming to the stage, doing simple things is the most difficult in the world. In fact, what we are building is, we are building management systems to create sustainable business practices. In the process, we are trying to manage risk and opportunity related to governance, environmental and social issue. In that order, I will put. So we are not building ESG, or we are not building practices towards ESG. We are building business practices and management systems to manage the risk and opportunity associated with these three terms. Specifically, this becomes prevalent after we got an entire supply chain disruption thanks to COVID. So that is the pretext. Now, answering to your question, I think compliance drive things, but we are focused on how we convert compliance to competitiveness. I take the cue from Ram. He was discussing about why the business are not able to do what they are supposed to do, because the stakeholder, often the market doesn't really reward the good practices, because we do not have proper financial measure to convert the performance so that people can evaluate and reward. So then how do you convert compliance to competitiveness? That is what our things, what we are trying to build. BRSR, when it came to India, It's not that the reporting of KPIs related to environment, social governance was not known to us. Many big companies in India, we are one of the big companies, we used to do that. There were international standards. I think the question is that how you link. So the first step is, instead of addressing a simple standard requirement, build your own KPIs. KPI pool, let us call it a KPI pool. That's why we have our standardized KPI pool, and obviously our past 15 years of experience has helped to comply to BRSR requirement. But building your KPIs, that means how do you measure a particular aspect related to environment, social or governance issue, that you should internalize, and that will help you in meeting multiple compliance requirement, irrespective of whether it is national BRSR or it is GRI or it is any international standards which require you to report. That's the first thing. You create your internal KPI pool. Once that step is done, the second step is you have to have your internal control by putting systems. When I mean controls means you must know what you are reporting or what you are getting for management information are trustworthy, they are right. So that is where you have to give ownership, you have to have a check and balance, you have to have your internal systems. That means if at the end of the day I am getting a report that I have consumed so much of energy, is it true? Is it real? Now the next question comes up, what I'll do with the data? The data should be converted to management informations. And just to give an example, like in JSW, if you see, the internalizations of these performance has been integrated to business practices. For example, every day, when my plant manager reviews a report, we call DPR, daily production report. So it is a production report, it used to call, but they don't only review what is the production, what is the availability of raw material, what is the maintenance. They also monitor what is my water consumption, what is my CO2 emission, what is my energy consumption. So this internalizations of KPIs will help you to take actions to manage those resources well. So therefore you bring in competitiveness. The last part, in fact, that is the panel what we are discussing. What is the role of supply chain? You use the word value chain. I consider both supply and demand side are the part of the value chain. The most difficult part is to integrate your demand side, that's the customer. I just can't go and ask my customer, okay, if you don't give this information, I'll not sell my product. It's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. What I can offer to the customers, that I have options to choose from, which is good for you, both quality, costs, and sustainability performance. So that is there, I have to give them an offer. Now coming to the supply side, why I have to get the information from supply side to integrate into my reporting? See, BRSR gives a compliance to integrate my value chain, right? But why my value chain is obliged to give me information? I'll tell you an example. When anybody does a business with JSW, we have given a supply chain code of conduct, right? So they agree. And then I see not a single supplier has declined that I will not follow your supply chain code of conduct. That means nobody is reading that. Okay? Because they know if I tell I cannot, they will lose the business with JSW. So that triggers me actually to evaluate where my supply chain lies. Lies means not LIES, lie. Where they are actually doing. But most importantly, I am interested what is the risk to my business. If a supplier is located in an area which is prone to flood and tomorrow I don't get my coking coal in time, my business will get disrupted. That's my interest. And I was really worried when I go for a long list of parameters that I want my supplier to disclose to me in order to make me compliant to my national authorities. I was wondering whether anybody will really respond it, because many of my customer, they are, where I am a supplier, part of the supply chain, I am a supplier, like OEMs, they ask me a lot of questions. I don't look at those mails. Yeah, because every day I get for 10 mails. So why should I disclose those information? So similarly, in my mind, it was, why my supplier is going to respond to my queries? And that is where we have tried to prioritize to find what is important to them and what is important to me, that intersections. And that started the interactions, and that started the interest of my supplier to disclose the informations to us. I was really surprised when we really launched a JSW supply chain sustainability program. Almost 70 to 80% of my supplier has responded fully. It was damn surprise for me. I was not expecting. I would have happy to get 30%, but it has gone to 70%. Maybe there is a confidence, and there is a confidence in the system because what questions we have set are not abstract questions. It is about them to introspect also. But anyway, those are the large suppliers. You might ask what you do with MSME. That will be the next part. So to summarize, how do we drive compliance to multifarious international and national regulations? The core of our belief is to convert compliance to competitiveness. Create a internal pool of KPIs that you need to monitor to get your business benefit. Put controls within your systems to ensure your data are trustworthy. The fourth part, take decision based on those trustworthy data and information that you get. That should be business decision. The fifth and last part, don't leave your supply chain alone. Be a part of your supply chain. You have to understand we are in a business. We are interconnected with every supply chain. So one person being successful is not going to make us successful even in business. So take them into your complete business decision in a way that it should sound a win-win proposition. That will be my summarization of 5 steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabodh. I think very well put. And you highlighted, you said you are surprised when we are surprised. We do a lot of supply chain work. 70% and the kind of number of suppliers that you have, it's absolutely fabulous. And you talked about defining KPI, and let me now move to Deven here, and Prabodh did talk about complexity, supply chain. How do you embed your ESG goals, right, into the complex supply chain and ensure that happens through a process, right? It cannot be left to them. So how do you manage that with your company?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Preeta, and thanks for inviting me. Just for everyone to know, I'm Deven. I come from CG Power, and CG Power is part of the Murugappa group, right? So we have 18 listed companies in India, a lot of responsibility from that point of view. So, just to kind of let you know, we spoke about value chain, right? So value chain actually starts with supplier and ends with customer, right? So when we talk about, look at, ESG as a topic, right? So I joined CG Power 1.5 years back. Before I was working with Schneider Electric for 13 years. Schneider Electric started their journey much before, right? Of course, they are one of the prominent players now. When it comes to, very, very advanced stuff that they are doing, right? And they have actually transformed their business model around the ESG, actually, if you look at their products and everything. So from product organization to a solution organization, supporting ESG at the same time, solving problem, right? Now, we have started this journey very strongly in CG with the complete management being new, and we have also hired a full-time ESG leader. Abhijit is here with me, right? So the idea is what I'm trying to tell is we have embedded all the goals which are like related to BRSR or S&P 500 or coming from the CDP and all, right, into one particular master tracker which is being monitored weekly, right? With all the factories. We have 16 factories in CG today. And if you look at, from value chain point of view, right, let's start with the supplier side. For example, we have 40% of our business comes from the last mile delivery, right? So motors is a very big business. We have a lot of LT motors. We have a lot of fractional horsepower motors, which we distribute to customer through dealers, distributors, and retail, right? Now, this supply chain, if you look at, was not digitized at all. We were actually running it quite conventionally. what we have done is, right, 40% of our business now is actually run through partner delivery, and they actually make the last time delivery. Now, what has happened is, by virtue of that, we were not getting data before. Now we are getting all the data. We have, which includes all the emission, everything, part truckload, full truckload and everything. From efficiency point of view, we were not able to measure what is my, customer requested ship date compliance. Now it is, we have a target, 98% is a target, and we are able to see that. And third thing is, we have minimized our part truckload shipments, which means that we are reducing the carbon footprint drastically, right, with this last mile delivery, right? So, this is something which we are able to capture as a data. If we talk about the supplier side, right, we have kind of looked at the complete, digitization. Of course, digitization it comes later. But first of all, we need to understand that how we are going to look at suppliers, right? So before that, we were looking suppliers with respect to spend, right? Now, this is not the right way of looking at the impact, right? So we have to look at what are the critical components which are being manufactured by supplier. At the same time, what are the critical processes adopted by supplier? Again, taking same motors example, right? We have one component which is casting, the frame body of the motor, right? Now this is made through casting a process, and we have to make sure that we have casting process as compliant as as we can achieve compliance on it, right? So what we have done it, we kind of straight away said that no to cupola furnace, for example, right? So cupola furnace is nothing but, conventional, you would fire the furnace and, you kind of, make the molten metal. We said that we will go with the electric arc furnace, right? So this is something which we have systematically drawn, and we made sure that all suppliers are compliant to it, right? And when you visit suppliers, we have actually went up to the state where, we are actually making sure that electric arc furnaces are fired through some solar plant, which is, set up somewhere in remote place, right? Which is not possible, if it is not possible in the supplier premises, right? Because of space constraint or whatever. So this is one example. There are a lot of examples like that, right? We are even looking at milk runs. We are even looking at how we can kind of, even if you look at, I talked about, before CapEx, right? So each and every CapEx has to go through the ESG committee, right? So, and I will give you some relevant examples, right? There were many CapExes which were coming to us for, say, for example, gensets which are run through diesel, right? So we said no to that, and we are actually going for a greener options. There were CapExes for compressors, right? So when you look at, this supplier is L1, L2, L3, this is T1, T2, T3. But we said that can you actually look at, right, what is the OPEX? If you buy certain compressors, right, what is the OPEX, operational expense I'm going to incur for next 10 years, right? Based on the efficiency. So these are like TCO based purchase decisions, right? So you end up actually selecting a supplier who is not L1, because you are looking at efficiency, right? Which again, reduces your carbon footprint, right? There were CapEx requests which were like related to cars, company cars and all, right? Which we said that nothing doing, we are going to buy only electric cars, right? And, one very beautiful thing what we are doing is, we are actually building largest transformer factory in Shihor in Bhopal. It is Asia's largest, right? It's a power transformer factory. And in that factory, Preeta, we are looking at, how we can, though we have a lot of land, we have almost 45 acres of land, right? Because government of Madhya Pradesh has allocated us huge amount of land parcel. But we said that, is there any way we can look at, before we go with actual construction, create models, break them, again recreate, break them, recreate, right? Till we are satisfied. So we actually also employed a Japanese consultant on that, right? Who is helping us with the complete lean production line from day one, right? Which means that we are actually looking at single piece flow. We are looking at, minimum number of working stations, right? And we are making sure that there is at each and every stage, the muda, or I would say the waste, is eliminated, right? Whether it is overproduction, processing, or waiting time, right, is eliminated. So by virtue of it, we are actually also reducing a huge amount of carbon footprint, emissions and everything. So this is something which is actually part of the culture. And finally, if I just talk about the EHS, right? So EHS safety is of paramount importance for the organization. And this is something which is not only for the organization, but also for the complete value chain. Couple of things, right? So we have, as a management team, we are making sure that every Friday for 15 minutes, we spend time on safety, right? Looking at all the safety aspects. We are making sure that, because factories are pretty old, 40 years, 45 years, right? So we are prioritizing all the capex with respect to wherever it is, the life is over of the equipments. We are making sure we are changing them. Number two, we are actually not compromising with crane kind of operations where, we have to go with, for example, reputed makes. We are going with reputed makes, irrespective of whether they are L1 or L2. And number three, and which is actually the most important thing, is we are empowering people on the ground to take decisions, right, with respect to EHS, not looking at the cost, because in the previous session we talked about value, right? So eventually it will have a very higher payback or ROI, as an organization. And few things you cannot simply measure on the financial terms, right, unless you start allocating cost to it, right? So.
Thank you. Very interesting and, very well put. Prabodh talked about internalizing, you also echoed that, saying, you have the internal processes and you're also monitoring, talking about the Friday meetings. And sustainability is more important than just the cost, right? And I think managing that is not an easy balance, but having the ESG stakeholders in every business decision, I think that's the change that I'm hearing, which is really great. Now moving on to you, Bhavya, from Urban Company, and I think your value chain is actually individuals and nano enterprises, the social fabric, and I think a big impact on the S part of it. So how do you ensure that, as your platform grows, that your value chain, this value chain, is also, there is income stability, social protection, fair value, because it's a growing chain and there are so many tiny elements that you're looking at.
Thanks, Preeta, for the question. Before I start, thanks DNB for inviting me here. Very interesting panel. Honestly, I think I'm the odd one out in the panel and probably in the room as well. Not going to talk much about environment and environmental impact, focusing more on social aspects. So actually, when we started Urban Company back in 2014, the goal was pretty simple, plugging the two spectrum of the marketplace, customers and the technical service professionals. And while we are doing that, how do we empower the service professionals we onboard onto the platform? I think for us, then gradually that became a journey, and social impact or ESG became interwoven with the business model itself. So it wasn't ESG or impact was not an afterthought. It was part of the way we did business, the way we continue to do business, and we'll continue to do business in future as well, right? So, and that evolution led us to, say, a 5-stack process. How do we empower service professionals? We provide them a tech stack, so where they can be onboarded onto platform through training and upskilling. We have a full-fledged in-house team of trainers who of different trades and skills that the service professionals then go and impart to the customers. So we have a very large footprint of almost more than 250 training centers in India. We have a 300 people training team who are training the service professionals we onboard day in, day out, right? So that's the training infrastructure we have. And once they complete the training, they also get a Skill India certification, which is through our partnership with NSDC. Then post the training and skilling comes in your largely your social protection measures that we have built in. So one is the biggest one for us would be the middle class earnings that we promise to provide to our service professionals, right? And I'm always very proud to say this. We are one of the only company, in fact, globally, one of the very few companies globally to transparently share our earnings index, how much our partners, service professionals are earning on the platform. We've been doing this for the past 4-5 years now. And even if you've looked at our last quarter's earnings index that we released, so that on an average, any service professional working on the platform would be earning net monthly close to 28,300 rupees, going as far as up to the top 5% earning more than 50,000 net earnings on the platform. Now, these are earnings that put you in the top 5% of the country itself. I mean, these are not small earnings. These are not, by any fit of imagination, can you say these are just side gigs or side income? These are very well-earned, hard-working people who are working, getting this money through a very proper framework, process, and systems in place. It's not just, there was a time when gig would be considered probably lowly. I think Urban Company has been one of those few organizations that has brought dignity back to this profession itself, right? So middle class earnings and dignity of labor become a very critical part of what we are building and how we are empowering service professionals. The other aspect of social protection would be the insurance covers that we have, right? So life, accidental, health. For all the active service professionals on the platform, this is your 10 lakh life cover, your disability cover, emergency ambulance services, everything that a typical employee probably would get are also being shared with the service professionals. Beyond this, there is access to credit. So if you take a step back, these are technicians or individuals who, if they were not on Urban Company, they would be working independently with zero access to your formal banking system. Right. So the moment they join the platform, of course, they're financially, now they're part of the financial inclusion network. So they have bank accounts. They have access to credit through the platform, through NBFCs. So we've tied up with NBFCs. They get from a very simple, small size ticket loan of 10,000 to up to, a lakh or so, whatever depending on their needs. They're able to access that amount through just a tap of few buttons on the app. Now, these are individuals who would even for, say, 5,000 rupee might have to go to a private money lender otherwise, if not in part of the financial system, right? So I think that way we have been able to prevent individuals to go into a debt trap of sorts. Post that, I think we have a lot of other initiatives on the platform, such as Udan, where we are teaching women service professionals how to drive a two-wheeler, and these are free of cost training, of course, and we are also then helping them, if they so want, to purchase a two-wheeler as well, so tying up with other NBFCs. Then there is Project NIDA, where we are helping professionals who are facing domestic violence. How can they get access to free counseling, free legal support, emergency lodging, law enforcement support. So we are enabling all of that. So, like I said, so we are not just looking at professional development of individuals, we are also looking at how do we create an environment where they can actually succeed in life. And that's what we've been largely trying to drive.
Thank you, Bhavya. I think you've touched the social fabric of the country in whichever way you can, and it's good to see you growing. We were just talking before that. We now move on to questions related to data. I think ESG, as we look at monitoring, measuring, it doesn't work without data. And data is unstructured. Of course, we have different tools, but they all need to be managed. But before I get into the data, questions, we have a poll, and there's going to be a QR code. May I request all of you to just scan and put in your answers, and we can see it here, or log on to menti.com and put the code 62204713. So if you can just scan and put in your, the answers, please. Yeah. So what is the biggest gap affecting ESG data quality today? Please select all the questions that apply, and these are the answers. Okay, I think we have it still. Oh. Great. I think the largest 87% is fragmented data across multiple teams and systems and unclear ownership. And this is what we also realize. I think Thank you all for sharing. Still, in spite of all the tools, AI, digitization, etc., we have this answer, which was, I think, the same if I look back even 5 years back. So it's interesting. So let me move on now to Ambalika. Ambalika, working with your customers, what kind of patterns do you see in data quality, and how do you help solve them and navigate this journey?
First of all, thank you, DNB and Preeta, for this invitation, and it's a pleasure listening to everybody. The best part of being a solutions provider is that we do not specifically lean towards a sector, and we have so much knowledge to share. So I can be a little crude in stating the facts to everybody. The news that nobody is talking about is that supply chain disruptions is going to be the part of life going forward. Since 2020, there has never been a single year that was uneventful and the supply chains weren't disrupted. So the board, the leadership needs to get okay with the fact that you will always be looking in the eye of uncertainty. That's first idea to kind of romanticize with. Second piece is that, irrespective, I think in this poll, if there would have been a fifth option saying, how do I make sense of what I see? That would have stood at par with the 88%, like, okay, we know there is fragmented data, but then what do I interpret of what I'm seeing, right? Because for the board and leadership, it's more about the strategy, and probably at the end of the day, we are humans. So I'm looking at the strategy given the time span I have left to serve on this board, right? Execution person, a manager, getting data is probably looking at it from a perspective, given the job, KRAs, appraisal that they are going to serve. The larger underlying, thread to this entire fabric is something that gets misconstructed as the KRAs and KPIs move from top down. So it's not just the fragmentation of the data, but also the orientation around why certain data points make sense. So if you ask about a procurement guy, we heard about spend-based, right? You ask about a procurement guy will tell you this is the material we've procured for the month. But that doesn't mean you've sent it for production the same month, right? You're going to store it, you're going to stock it. There is some excess that is going to, or there is marketing consignments and shipments that are lying in your warehouses, right? They are still yet to go on that downstream transportation piece. So the underlying understanding about why data is needed and that universal understanding within the teams, right? We are looking within our very scope is kind of missing. So that's like the biggest challenge around, data, and the overall understanding of how teams go about addressing it is the biggest one today. And then the overall, the dashboards cannot be same for everybody, right? You will, and like I go back to saying that the supply chain disruption will be real. You cannot blacklist your suppliers. You will always need to have a bucket. So today probably, I think my panelist colleague here mentioned that they blacklist certain suppliers, or we do not engage in business with certain kind of suppliers, but you will still have to keep them in your kitty in case a supply chain disruption happens. They are going to be your, last resort kind of suppliers. So a platform needs to bring that flexibility in where you can model such scenarios, where you can model such geographies, understand the suppliers from particular geography, their maturity, their ability to service to your ESG requirement. Probably you need to have a regional ESG strategy for that matter, right? You cannot have a universal. You aim towards achieving a net zero by 2045 or 2050, but you still need to have regional strategies to enable all of that. So that is the thing around data, the quality, the underlying, understanding around the data, the way it's being reported, the siloed structures within the organization is still the biggest hindrance.
Thank you, Ambalika. I think you rightly started off saying supply chain disruption. I think it's so real with currently what's happening in the Middle East. And I think everybody's struggling to see how we can cope up with it. India is comparatively much better, but we've seen the impact on oil prices, etc., all of that happening. And this is going to be the world that we live in. So taking the data conversation forward, Radhika coming from Wipro, right? Supply chain, the value chain data, we have seen the kind of responses we've got, and you work a lot with the MSMEs and the kind of, the programs that you run from them. So how do you look at the data, the MSMEs and the value chain overall?
Yes, thank you for that question, Preeta, and thank you for the invite to be here on this panel. So just to kind of go back a little bit, Wipro, we have about 4,000 suppliers across all categories, small, medium, large, different sectors, manufacturing to services to logistics and everything. So just trying to kind of make sense of, what kind of data we get from each kind of group of suppliers, right? So now we have been, of course, doing this Scope 3 calculations, but being on a spend-based, right, which is the methodology so far. Also doing a kind of a natural capital valuation as well for our suppliers. But kind of to really get impact, it's important to get activity-based emissions. And I think that's where we launched a program to work with our small and medium suppliers. It's called the WISE, which is the Wipro Initiative for Supplier Engagement, where we actually work with our small, medium suppliers, but we, of course, collect data. Now, what we realized is a lot of them just don't have the data. So, forget the fragmented part of it. Some of them don't even know what kind of data to collect. There has to be a human in the loop, right? So that is something that we have found, and we have really, our program is all revolved around building capacity. So working very closely with our suppliers to build capacity on what kind of data to collect. Because just administering a CDP type questionnaire, I think somebody mentioned in the previous panel, is just too exhaustive. I mean, they just cannot answer it. So the kind of questionnaire that we've designed is also to get very pointed information and to make it very easy for the suppliers to understand what is the data that is required. So the design of the questionnaire, the kind of questions we ask, and the way we administer it is all something that we have designed in-house, so as to get very, very meaningful data from our suppliers without making it so exhaustive that it's difficult for them. So and in the process, really building capacity. So what is Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3? How do you measure it? And what kind of policies are we looking for? Because we also have to match on in terms of what does Wipro stand for, and what are our basic requirements on E, S, and G on the, so we want an environment policy, we want health and safety to be a very important part of what suppliers are doing, what kind of social policies do they have, human rights. So that's the kind of program we've designed. So currently we are working with about 150 small and medium suppliers to actually get this data. And as I said, we're increasingly finding out that they are willing to work with us, which is great, barring, of course, a few. But this is something that is also helping them in the larger ecosystem, because similar IT services companies, I mean, we share a pool of suppliers. So, and all, OME or the large companies are asking the same data points. So this kind of capacity building actually helps them respond to other companies as well. So in fact, that is something also that we're considering is, can we create a pool of suppliers, and can we, the IT services companies sort of come together and, do the same kind of training. And so you're kind of looking at it more on a sector wise, and, so then the impacts are much more far reaching.
Thank you. I think the same thing that was brought up in the first session also, if we can have a consolidated group looking at that. Now, moving on to Ameya, again, you worked across different customers. What do you think are the biggest challenges that companies face in embedding ESG across these multi-tier value chains?
Okay. Thank you so much, Preeta, for that question and inviting us here. I think that question has multiple layers to it. And we saw some of the layers now in the poll also. So if I divide it into two categories, say a surface level answer and perhaps a deeper reason and how we can act on it, then the surface level we see people are saying that, okay, we're finding it challenging to find the data. Is it fragmented? How do I make sense of it? So all of those are the queries or the reasons we find at surface level. But to look at it, why these queries are coming and how do we resolve them, we have to look at what is it that we are seeking from it. And a lot of times, even in previous panels, there have been questions about what is the value. So if we take a step back and see where this regulation has come from, and a lot of times we are affected by how the global environment is, and we think that ESG in India is also driven by requirements of environment only, but that is not the case. See, what has happened is India for the longest time said that we didn't create this problem, so why should we be the ones paying for it? But we came at that commercial angle, right? We came it, so it's not the Ministry of Environment which released BRSR. It has been released by SEBI. And what is SEBI's mandate? Make markets function well, make investors confident. So you see the difference starkly in the matrix which is asked for. We are not asked for which species did you hurt or what things go in TNFD, right? What we are asked for, how much electricity per unit of production did you use? It's competitive metrics. In this world, the corporation or organization which can be the most efficient is going to be the most successful, right? So all of the metrics are like that. So what we are tracking power per unit resource or per unit output. We are tracking water per unit resource output or per unit of your profit. What we are tracking other than that, so these are the efficiency category metrics. Then there is a resilience category metrics, and you put it in very nicely that every single year there has been a disruption in supply chain, right? So what we are tracking, how many of your suppliers are local? Those are not going to be disrupted. When they are far away, they are going to be disrupted, right? So this is the built into metric, and we sometimes forget it, that we are coming at it from the profitability and loss avoidance. So third category is about loss avoidance. So those are the metrics where how much pollution you are generating, how much is going to the waste fill, what is your cost to treat that pollution, right? So all of our angle has been from cost competitiveness, and this realization has to go into organizations, right? So what happens is when organizations realize, when there is training, that this is cost competitiveness metrics, this is not an only ESG metric. While you are tracking electricity, you are tracking electricity per unit of production output, right? So when organizations realize, when our suppliers realize, and this is something very instinctive to an Indian business, right? An Indian businessman will be quickly able to tell you how much is my turnaround, how much was my input cost, right? And that's why what regulators did, okay, cost-based metrics is allowed, right? So quickly you can get those data points as soon as you propagate that knowledge. So what we do these kind of trainings, both for the boards at different management levels, at supplier levels, make them aware. These are the metrics which make you performant. As soon as they realize, suddenly these problems go away. And the fifth item that you wanted to put in, that how do I make sense of it? Immediately there is clarity and sense. So this is how it filters through different value chains and comes out.
Yeah, I think very well put.
Perhaps I'll just add one example to it. Because people, when I give them this explanation, they are confused. Okay, tell me one example, all right? So let me select one new age company, say Zomato, right? What they did is had weather stations, 600 locations across the country. Why would a food delivery app want a weather station? Because every time it rains, they can quickly increase the price and delivery time, right? Every time it rains, they can tell their customer in advance, this delivery is not possible. What we do, we tell our supplier, 5 दिन में माल आने वाला था, नहीं आया. Sir, there is flooding on the way. If we were able to track it, we can do a backup supplier, right? If we were able to track these disruptions, and this is now happening in real time. We are aware of shipping companies are facing Port of Hormuz problem because they are being tracked in real time. Government has already moved to it. All the GST invoices it is being tracked where the truck is. We need to wake up and track our supplier where he is and adjust and reformulate the plans for this competitive focused ESG.
Very well put, Ameya. I think competitiveness is key, as we heard, and without this data, and that, we won't be able to monitor it. So thank you, well put. Bhavya, moving on to you now, and we talked about measurement and we talked about impact, and ultimately everybody wants to see what's the impact that you have created. Again, in the sector that you are in, right, how do you report and measure the social impact of the gig system? Because maybe you're investors, everybody would like to know. So how do you do that, such as livelihood created? These are not easy matrices to track and report.
Absolutely. Especially the systems that are, tools, software tools that exist for ESG dashboards or metrics and ratings. They are very bent towards or lean towards traditional organizations, traditional setups. So for an organization like ours, or in a larger sense, platform economy, which has emerged over the last 10, 15 years, I think we overall, in some sense, struggle with those tools and metrics that we look at, that are traditionally looked at. So what we look at is, for example, would be the earnings. What is the benchmark earning that the workers are making on the platform, and how is that increasing steadily over time? Then if there is insurance, and how many claims came in, how many were processed, what was the record intact? For example, if there's been if there are loans that are being accessed, how much, what is the quantum deployed? Like how many, what kind, the value that we have generated, or what number of people who are accessing loans and using it for what purpose. So is it for education, self-education, or education for the children? Is it for an asset purchase? Is it for emergencies? And then if you're looking at digitization, how many pulled into financial inclusion? How many registered on eShram, which is the new portal that the Labour Ministry has come out with for platform workers? So we've tried to map all of everything that is requisite or important for this industry, for gig workers, and how we are stacking against that. I mean, how our workers stack against that, and how are we improving that year on year. So those are some, in a way, they are parallel metrics that we've created apart from everything else in BRSR or other tools that do exist, which are your very standard metrics. But what is most relevant to us would be these. And we've been tracking that.
Thank you, Bhavya. Now, moving on to Prabodh. Prabodh, without technology anyway, we can't measure all of these, but yours is a complex, very well diversified group, and in the maturity curve, you're also way ahead. So now we talk about, assurance, and the trust factor, etc., coming in. So what kind of technologies that you've used? What has had the biggest impact in getting the organization assurance ready as far as ESG is concerned?
Thank you. I think assurance plays a very big role to bring in confidence. And technology brings, I'll borrow that word, Rajeshji, from Snowkap, it brings complexity to clarity. So I really like that, what you are trying to put. So I borrow that. So you need both the piece. Technology will bring your complexity to clarity, that you know what you are measuring. I'll tell you an example. When I joined this group 6 years before, I asked for some simple KPIs to see. What's the emission? What's the water consumption? And I got 4 or 5 different numbers when I looked at the emissions. And I asked, why these numbers? No, this numbers follows this methodology, this number follows this methodology, this number follows this methodology. And what will do with that? What the decisions, business decision we are going to take? And that is where it led to bring fast step, what I stated also. For any organization, this is valid, that you built in your internal pool of KPIs that you need to monitor. Now question is, how do you monitor? And there you need a technology. And I have faced that challenges. Even technology is, you have nowadays n number of technology, software solutions, AI build, people keep on telling me every day that I have a new software which will help. I tried that 5 years before, and when they visited, I told, in a steel plant, I have built from, 8 million, 0.8 million to now 19 million. So how do you see those complexity? They told, yes, what we stated is not that simple. So technology, even it is available, adapting to your own situation brings that complexity you should be aware about. So once you build that system, then you need to build that, what I stated, I'll repeat that, it's very important, maker and checker, because this is related to assurance. Because what I believe, assurance in two parts. One is internal assurance, and that's very important. Because the question came to mind when I see different numbers, that why don't I see EBITDA numbers different? Why don't I see any financial number differently being tracked? Because the accounting is very clear, method of tracking is very clear, there is a strong internal control and strong external validations by external assurance. And that we have to apply in any field. And that is why your internal KPI or standards will make you the single standard that you follow. Technology will ensure that you get the right numbers, and that right numbers need internal assurance. That is where we have made maker and checker. So somebody disclosing the information, that has to be validated by his superior. That gives you internal assurance. And then you have internal audit to assure that your numbers are reliable. So that is where you get the right number. And then you get the external assurance by a third party, which is necessary, because that will give the credibility in the outside market. I'll give an example how it is giving me help. You might be hearing something called CBAM is coming. And our sector, we are primarily in steel sector, it is going to impact it if I want to send any product to Europe. Now, CBAM gives a default number, and for India it's very high. That means, to give an idea, that if I have to export today in 2026 when it is applicable, if I use default data, my basic product, which is called HR coil, will have almost 220 euro of additional cost. Carbon cost only, it will be around 220. It will keep on increasing every year. So that means it will be higher than my production cost. So it will make me unviable to send the product to Europe. But there comes, if you have an internal system, because we have built, now I know what is my actual emission, which is 50% of the default emissions. And then that gives me a competitive advantage, that I know my numbers, which I can get it third party assured and disclose this to regulator, and that will reduce my carbon cost almost by 70 to 80%. So that's value of assurance. The other value of assurance, I think, credibility. Wherever you want to disclose, any investor, any bankers, any regulator, any community, wherever you give your numbers, everybody will ask, who has told this number is correct? So you need credible verifier. I think we have some assurance provider in the room. So we need them to ensure that they need to tell that what we are doing is right. But I will repeat again, the most important is not that what you get assurance from external sources. What you get assurance from internal processes is most important.
The maker and checker that you said so rightly, absolutely. Moving on to Ambalika, and Prabodh also mentioned it. What kind of, platform validation features do you see companies using?
Yeah. So, what has happened in recent past, we never saw AI taking over the way it has, right? And while it appears to us like a fortnight development, this has been in the mapping and the progress since 1960s. What AI is actually is it's mapping the human brain over neural networks and patterns over decades, right? And today is the kind of surge and growth that we've seen that is actually work of decades that has gone into making. Now, when it comes to technology platform, everybody is in kind of a rush of lacing their platforms with AI. The thing is that your AI is as good as the prompt that you have, the model that you've given, or the input data. Now, if your input data is biased or is skewed, your output will be skewed. So initially, how the platforms, and specifically even at Snowkap, how we have really laced in AI is to just bring anomalies. Just identify anomalies. And going back to what Prabodh mentioned, like, let the checker be the best person. He's been in that damn job for 10, 20 years. Let him look at the anomaly and say, yes, this is an anomaly, or no, this is what has happened. We took a improvement project, and that's why my emissions have gone up, right? And that is how you will train and make your AI models relearn the way your enterprise is growing, the way your enterprise has a growth trajectory around it. So that's the first kind of validation. And then, of course, there is so much information about you out there already. Some that you, as an organization, you have publicly went and disclosed, and so much on the internet already from different sources, right? Your AI can actually help you do a lot of that brand reputation guardrailing. So it can actually flag different users, it can do the regulatory landscape monitoring for you, or if you really are able to map your supply chains in region-specific suppliers, their volume or the percentage of business coming in from that region, your AI can do that early warning systems for you. And that's how the platforms, or how we are bringing new features on the platform, is actually all primed towards it. And these are some early set of validations that are coming in. But like I said, or I would like to mention, is that, not everybody has to go through that same journey to eventually arrive at a maturity point. For example, countries in Africa really don't have to go through burning coal to understand that solar is a better source of energy. They can actually fast forward and switch over to solar, right? In the same way, we don't really have to go through the problems and mistakes of a biased data, right? I know how my organization, how my enterprise, how my leadership, how management has been looking at certain data points, what my growth numbers are, what my growth trajectory is. I can really prime my model, my AI, to do that for me. And that is the next level of enhanced features and simulations that we are bringing on the platform. So those are some interesting, innovative set of validations that companies should be looking out for.
Thank you, Ambalika. Moving on to Deven. Deven, for sustainable procurement, if I look at it that way, right? Again, these digital tools become very critical, and you've talked about a good process when we talked about ESG in the first session. So what are your thoughts? How have you sort of put a good digital solution in procurement where the ESG values are embedded?
So, I will just also cover, our own setup, right? Apart from the procurement alone. So I think, we actually divide into two, right? So one is, what are the lagging indicators? So lagging indicators are usually your KPIs, right? What is that you want to achieve? And what are the leading indicators, right? So leading indicators is what are the actions you will take, which will take you, to the lagging indicator, right? And then, if you are actually having a solid and robust leading indicators, right? I will give an example, right? So what we, let's take example of EHS, near misses, right? So what we did in our organization is we said that go and identify near misses, right? So people went around, and they came back across 16 factories, say 850 near misses, right? So, okay, fine, near misses, meaning the opportunity to improve. Near misses reporting system, everything is there, right, in place, but we kind of ran the drive. We divided all the near misses into high, medium, low, and we said that all the high and medium should be over in 1 month's time. Means we have to take a project, we have to take actions on all this one, and then, you kind of divide it into week-wise, day-wise actions. And at the end, that what is that you're going to achieve, what is the kind of assurance you are going to get as a lagging indicator later on, right? So, and it's going to be uniform. And there is also cross sharing, right? So if one factory has identified something and the other factory has not thought of, right? You actually look at, and horizontally deploy across, right? So this is something which we are also doing on the procurement side, right? The procurement side, we have started, standardization. So we call it standard work. Standard work is a terminology that we use in the organization. Anything we do should be standard, right? So templates. So templates starts with the vendor portal. In vendor portal, we have each supplier has the uniform requirement, right? For CG Power, we are into 6 businesses, right? And a lot of businesses actually the same universe as, for example, ABB, Siemens, or Schneider Electric, and all, right? So we have common suppliers. Right, so this is something which we kind of look at. Another leading indicators we work on is a category management. So category management is nothing but all the main categories, right? For example, casting, I was giving example before, right? Like that we have steel, like that we have PCBAs and all, right? So we look at which are the suppliers, right, which are getting aligned to us on the ESG, right? So they will be our growth suppliers. And all the new products which are being manufactured will have to go to them, right? And we also identify bottom suppliers. So bottom suppliers are the ones which are, ones which are having consistently poor performance on all the aspects, including cost, delivery, quality, and ESG, right? So we kind of move that business to grow suppliers. And this is something systematically we are doing to make sure that, we kind of do not keep burning the ocean. It's not about you have, say, 5,000 suppliers, so you have to go and make everyone ESG compliant. This is not something which we work on, right? So we actually work on the leading indicators. We develop leading indicators, and this helps us in the overall assurance on the leading indicators.
And managing it more predictably also.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Deven. Moving on to Radhika, and I just want to bring in the third-party risk angle here, and ESG. How critical is that? In Wipro, I know you have a robust framework, especially looking at tier 2, tier 3, the smaller supplier.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we of course, one of the, if you're looking at it from the risk angle, right? I mean, our suppliers also pose a risk to Wipro business. So some of the, being IT services, some of the biggest risks for us are data privacy, cybersecurity, AI governance. So we have a very kind of strict third-party risk management system. We have a vendor risk assessment system just to make sure that, our suppliers are meeting all the requirements so that there's not a risk to Wipro business. Now, in addition, we are also looking at environment and social aspects in our third-party risk management system. Of course, environment, of course, is straightforward. Are they following environmental laws, compliances? Do they measure their emissions to look after their water management and things like that? And from a social angle, of course, compliances are bare minimum. Human rights compliances are, of course, a bare minimum. But are they looking beyond? Are they looking at their tier 2 suppliers? And that is something, recently we've conducted a social assessment of the tier 2 suppliers who are working on Wipro campuses, like housekeeping, like security. And what direction do they have from our tier 1 suppliers, right? And how are they taking care of it? For example, appointment letters, overtime pay, provision of creche facilities, things like that. And we found that there are certain gaps, right? And how are we going to address that? So that is something that we are looking at, and how do we work with our tier 1 suppliers to make sure the human rights aspect is sort of carried on even to our tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, right? So this is some of the things that we are looking at, to work and build capacity with our suppliers, because these are some things which are very important from our values point of view, from our governance point of view. So that's something that we're looking at.
Thank you, Radhika. Moving on to Ameya, we are talking about data, we are talking about technology. We spoke about assurance. So reliability of data is very critical. And in this, AI-driven world, digitally collected data, right? What kind of guardrails that you think are more critical to ensure that the data credibility is there?
I think data credibility now is extremely important, right? I'll just tell you why it has also become very important, because what has happened is now investors look at ESG as a primary risk driver. Why so? Because risk values, the actual impact values of now each of the E, S and G component is higher than the catastrophe risks which used to be there earlier, say like your earthquake and hurricane. Right, so we are now ranking above those in each of the category. So G, we might have seen the Theanos or the FTX exchange. We have seen in social where companies had to shut down because of protests locally. We have seen in environment side also such damages like California fires, or even in Delhi simple things like industry is told to shut down because pollution level is high, right? So in each of these categories, now risks are very high. And when you're giving this pricing signal to market, because our reporting is going to the stock exchange, we are submitting it to the stock exchange, we are giving the pricing signals to market, we have to be deploying the same level of audit assurance methodologies as we deploy to our financial numbers. And this is not just in India, this is becoming a practice everywhere. So even if you look at the biggest AI companies, for example, we were having that discussion, OpenAI, what is the pointers they are giving out to investors to invest? We have reduced the cost per token. What is cost per token? Electricity used per token, right? By 1000x. So what is that metrics? Electricity per unit of your output or profit, right? Same metrics. So this is also an ESG metrics that they are pitching it to investors. Similarly, there are now risk categories where we put in the numbers that we as an organization, any organization can do that. We have done that risk management study. We have figured out these are the risks. We disclose these risks, and then how will we mitigate? Immediately, once you mitigate, that becomes your cost advantage. Say a flooding risk is there. If your organization, and a lot of IT companies in Bangalore did this last year, where the IT campuses got flooded, then they came up with a flooding risk analysis. What is the possibility of flood? How much flood will come? I will create a large storage chamber or a ponding area where that flood can be stored. Because at the time of flood, the water does not go to the drain. It comes back from the drain into the IT park. Right? So these are flooding risk mitigation. Similarly, there is drought risk mitigation. There are other types of climate hazard. And we were talking earlier in the day about how the heat factor is affecting human population. So that we have like a lot of these corporate campuses, heat is increasing. Is it comfortable for human to be outdoors? Is it, what is going to be the cost of maintaining that same temperature inside? So when we combine all of these together, say with methodologies available like digital twin, we go towards a proper simulation of each of these risk categories, both CAPEX side and operational side. Like how you mentioned, we are simulating and figuring out what is possible, and then go towards that output. Then you are managing ESG, you are putting the same metrics of audit as you are doing for your financial investor, because the data is ultimately going into your ESG score, into the financial exchange. So it becomes the same value chain. It is integrating more and more. Now I think the new IFRS standards are also out. So S1, S2 reporting is starting, and it is getting integrated into your financial reporting. So it's no longer that for this data sets, I can have 4 values, and for my financial numbers, I will only follow one methodology. It has to be same methodology, same level of checking for both.
ESG and financial reporting coming together, I think that's a good sign that is here to stay. And on that note, let me end with one last question, if all of you, and I'll start with Radhika and we'll come that way, is that where do you see ESG in your organization, right? 1 year from now, we'll not look at long term because there's so much of disruption. 1 year is long term enough. So where do you see, starting with Radhika, please, yeah.
I think sustainability within the organization, of course, while in our organization, quite mature in the sense of, our where we are, but our biggest disruption is in the supply chain, because that, or our value chain for that matter. And I think, so I see it in 2 ways. One is it's here to stay because of various aspects, just because of the uncertainty, because of regulations, because of customer requirements, because of various aspects. I think sustainability, ESG, both within the organization and in our supply chain, is here to stay. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And the second aspect, I think, the technology. I believe technology has been a great disruption, both in implementing sustainability initiatives, measuring and reporting. But the only aspect, I think, where I see there will be improvement is in really, because technology has to be accessible to the grassroots, right? I mean, the people who are actually putting in the data in our in the technology platform. I think it has to be simple enough for that for that person to sort of enter that data. And I see there could be a lot of improvement, but I think definitely these two aspects, I think, would be here to stay.
Thank you, Prabhu.
In one word, nothing is going to change. To little explain, because 1 year horizon you are asking me, I don't think anything is going to change. First of all, sustainability is truly integrated in business decisions at the moment. So it is in every level of business decision. It is no more in JSW being talked separately. It is talked along with it. Couple of risks are becoming very apparent, because now when I attend any of our board level risk committee, I think 60 to 70% discussion happen on these issues, which has a financial materiality impact. So carbon is getting discussed very often. Water is being discussed very often. Resource, raw material and compliance. These four things I could see from last 3-4 years are increasing momentum. If I take the time that management, when I tell management it's board and executive committee, spend on these things are equally important to other issues. So that has already increased in this year, in 1 year time. That is why I say it is not going to change much. Rather, possibly the discussion will happen more often, because now we are directly into CBAM phase, CCTS phase. Directly we see there is a financial materiality completely associated with your sustainability performance. We might discuss little more, but not downside.
Thank you, Ameya.
I think this year is going to be really where the sustainability in finance is taking off, right? So last year, SEBI came out with their green bond and ESG bonds initiative. And in the last year itself, around 11,200 crores of bonds got issued, right? And the momentum is increasing tremendously. Like say, developers issued it for buildings, road developers issued it for the tolled highways, the municipalities issued it for wastewater projects and metro rail projects and solar projects. There are a lot of solar issuers. There are banks who have come out. So I think it is about the takeoff of green finance, green bonds. Last year it was just the first year and we saw immediately more than 11,000 crore. I think it can go a few folds.
Thank you. Deven?
Yeah, quick, I would say, CG Power has just started the journey, but at the same time, we are making progress in LIPS, right? We have extremely responsible growth, focus. We are growing at 25% CAGR, right, every year. And, this is also because of, thanks to ESG, a lot of solar from Reliance, Adani, everyone is putting, right? So a lot of transformers, we have a huge amount of orders to be fulfilled, right? But at the same time, I think what we want to do in next 1 year is to kind of make sure that ESG and EHS is imbibed in spirit, in all stratas, including our employees, including our partners, right? And one of our value is respect, right? So respect for people, respect for partners, and respect for planet, right? So we kind of want to see that, how we can propagate that thought process across the organizations, right? So this is what we will focus on.
I think for us, last year was when the government rolled out COS, Code on Social Security. This year, ILO is convening its general meeting, annual general meeting, and there will be some platform work that will be on table that's being discussed. So that's definitely something that's we're going to keep track of. With respect to how we do things internally, I think there will be a lot more awareness and embedding of ESG metrics and other aspects into a lot of different functions, how they work. Say, for example, procurement, right? So, and given the kind of disruption that we're seeing right now, how do we further strengthen our risk resilience? So those will be the key aspects.
I'll speak more at a generalist level, and more from the tech side. So whether we like it or not, in next 1 year, what we'll notice is that the data will be either working for you or against you, you like it or not. There is more than enough data for you about your organization, about your suppliers, whether you have disclosed it or not, it's not even a question anymore. There are proxy databases, data sets, and then, we can triangulate from all other sources as well. So that's one thing. Second thing, I'm not to sound pessimist here, but just to give a reality check to everybody in the room, all smartwatches that you're wearing can actually feed your health data to your health insurance providers, right? Your premium would go fluctuating the way, you're matching your 10,000 steps or not. That's just the tip of the iceberg in manner that data can work for you or against you. Now, businesses need to keep up with that. I think we are not spending enough time in looking at it, but companies like us, we just enjoy doing that. We just take a random idea and then we go spiraling down it, and then once we are suffocated to death inside our meeting rooms, we are like, let's, float to the top. But next 1 year is going to be full of disruption, specifically in tech and data. Credibility, verification, tokenization of data will be seen in a big way. Your energy costs, data center costs, emissions, they will continue rising. Probably we'll find reasons to green nuclear, we'll find reasons to, justify all these sources more as green, but that's what future in next 1 year looks like.